Welcome to PASSIONEER Magazine The Podcast, where you'll hear inspirational stories, encouraging news, and in-depth interviews with authors, influencers, CEOs, and thought leaders. PASSIONEER Magazine The Podcast. Bold ideas, brave pursuits, boundless inspiration. Hello, and welcome to PASSIONEER Magazine, the podcast. I am so happy to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Dr. Butts. Dr. Chester. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And you are pretty gutsy to have a guy like me on.
Well, I am one that is all for great conversation. I have never been one that doesn't like to find out what's going on in the world around me. So I look forward to our conversation today. Now, before we get started, for those that are listening in, I do want to ask, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Don't ask my wife. What makes me me? I've got 50 plus years of experience, and I hope this doesn't clear the room, but I've got 50 years experience in the what's called specialty lines insurance industry, professional liability and specialty lines, really complex areas of insurance that involve major businesses. But it's like director and officer liability coverage, employment practice coverage, for to cover corporations for employee benefit programs. It's called fiduciary liability, and professional liability of all kinds. For the first 20 years, I handled claims and owned a claims adjusting company as well as a third-party claim administrator. So we were acting like we were the insurance company's claim department. And as the model started to change, I ended up getting a broker license and opened up a wholesale insurance brokerage and sold the coverages. So I've got 50 years experience in reading specialty line policies and professional liability policies, all of which are issued on what's called, and hopefully your listeners will understand what this means. They're issued on what's called a claims-made insurance policy. As dangerous a coverage as exists. Unlike your auto insurance, where you get into an accident and you suddenly realize, oh my God, thank goodness my policy just is renewed, because that policy requires that the accident or the occurrence take place during the policy term. But when it comes to professionals, it's not so easy, because when a professional commits an error, like running, or like you ran a red light, or you rushed a yellow and didn't see the car or the pedestrian or what have you, unlike that, when a professional commits an error, nobody's, unless it's medical related or something like that, no one knows they've been injured yet. And that could take 10 or 15 years, depending on what it is. Like if an architect, or an engineer makes a mistake on the load factor for a pedestrian bridge, nobody's going to know there's a mistake there until the bridge collapses.
Wow. Yeah.
Or an attorney screws up your will or your trust. Nobody's going to know until you've passed away, or you become incompetent, and then they realize, oh my God, this guy screwed up. So the problem is, how do you deal with that from an actuarial standpoint? If the policies used to be written out on an occurrence basis, but you had this long future tail. You couldn't really close the books on it because you don't know when a claim's going to come in.
Yeah.
So by having this claims-made policy, what happened was the error is certainly important, but when the other person is injured, becomes more important. And the key is when somebody over whom you have no control over decides to do something about it and make a claim against you. And so it gets much more complicated there, because what's a claim?
Yeah.
Is it when you get an angry phone call, or a nasty letter, or when you get served with a lawsuit, or maybe a governmental proceeding? So it gets really complicated really fast. And so I've been dealing with that problem for 50 years. I recently published a book on it called Claims Made insurance, a policy to change the industry, and it's not written for necessarily the purchasers, which of course it is, but it's really written for the consumers who are buying the coverage, because the policies have gotten so complicated by design,
Mm.
by design, that the number of claims being denied
Mhm.
is really unnecessarily high because people aren't paying attention. And
Yeah.
there's two reasons for it. First, people aren't reading the policies, which they should do.
Mhm.
But since these policies are being sold to professionals, they should have a better understanding of it. I mean, lawyers are the worst. Do you believe that or not? I did a big article for the International Risk Management Institute and looked at 224 claim denials. 224. 26% were from law firms.
Hmm.
Go figure that.
Wow.
And the next highest percentage were directors and officers, corporate officers. And but why? When they get served with a lawsuit, what do? They turn it over to corporate counsel.
Mhm.
Okay. And so between just those two, that's 46%.
Wow.
And then on top of it, you got architects and accountants and insurance agents and brokers and real estate agents and brokers,
Mhm.
podcasters.
Mhm.
You've got a media liability policy, I hope.
We have to make sure that we take care of ourselves,
There
right?
you go.
And
That's probably written on a claims made policy.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because there's a woman on TikTok who is a media attorney, and I'm gonna lump her in and use that phrase. I'm sure she calls herself something else, but she gives us those tidbits of information, saying, "Hey, the world is changing. It is not the same world that it was if you're a Gen Xer like I am. It is not the same world that we were living in when we were kids. We have to make sure that we are covered, and that we're really thinking about the all that we do and say." So you are so right. Now, along that vein, one of the things that we talk about is legacy and vision here on the show. And you have spent years making sure that people have, do, and be what they are supposed to do, have, and be, right? That they're
One would
operating
hope.
they're
One
operating
would hope.
properly, right? With that being said, when you look back over it from the start to where you are today, what do you think are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned, that you can pass on to, maybe one or two that you could pass on to someone who's just starting out?
I've got just the answer for you. But before I do, can I ask where you're physically located? What state? Just a state.
California.
Okay. California is the one that kicked this off. And you think, I don't understand that, considering we're supposed to be such liberal communists. But California is the one that started what's called the order taker standard of care, meaning your insurance broker has no duty to advise you of anything. They're only obligated to get the coverage you request and advise you if they can't. Now, that they can be held to a higher standard of care if they hold themselves out as experts, misrepresent coverage, or you agree to pay them to do what's called a risk management review, and that payment is in addition to whatever commission they get from an insurance company. So that's called the order taker standard of care. 36 other states follow that. And to tell you how crazy that is, I mean, to me, it's almost analogous to you going to see your doctor and he says, "Well, how are you, Miss Chester, today? What's wrong with you, and how would you like me to treat you? Would you like me to use this procedure, that procedure, or the other procedure? And I've only got 15 minutes to meet with you, so you need to make a decision." That's the analogy. And how insane is that,
Yes.
right? So if you're in Arizona, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and West Virginia, they don't follow that standard. They look at the totality of circumstances of the relationship. And in addition, two states have now ruled that insurance agents, insurance producers are held to a very high standard of care, similar to that of a fiduciary, but only two. And how crazy is that? because you've got enough on your hands doing what you do for a living, let alone having to learn about insurance and all the different kinds of policies you might need, and the language, and interpret them, and which I can't do. I testify as an expert witness now in court. I am not allowed to interpret a policy. Only a court can do that. But you're asking an insured to read it and understand it all. And I'll give you a good example how subtle some of this stuff is. And this is where, the gotchas that'll get you is my favorite phrase. And I actually have got a trademark application pending for that. We're going to do some interesting things with that. But some people have called me a coverage terrorist, which I happen to like. It was actually a dig from some underwriters when I was selling insurance. And I would call up my underwriter and I said, I don't like this language and I need you to endorse it and correct it. And if you don't, I can guarantee you, I will tell the insured what the problem is, and he may or may not buy it. So he called me a coverage terrorist. I kind of like that. Somebody else called me the educator in chief, because I do a lot of educating and seminars and stuff. But so let's come back to it though. The real problem is, here's a good gotcha look at you. The most popular, there are two conditions that are key conditions to a claims rate policy. The claim be made against you during the policy term, and you're required to tell the insurance company about that claim during the policy term. You can't sit on it. You got to report it right away. So let me ask you, here's the most common definition of the word claim. And believe me, there's 25 or more. The most common definition is a claim is defined as a lawsuit, B, a written demand letter, C, the commencement of a governmental or administrative agency action. Now, do you have any problem with any of those?
Most people are going to say no.
Makes sense, right? No,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Yeah. Well, just remember, it's a claims made and reported to the company policy. None of those definitions require that you know about or have been served with the lawsuit. The definition doesn't require that you receive the demand letter. And when a governmental agency opens a file on you, sometimes they don't tell you about it right away, but your policy's triggered. So how do you report something you don't know about?
Yeah.
That's a gotcha that'll get you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wouldn't tolerate. I called up my underwriter and said, I need you to add a sentence. A claim will be deemed first made when any of the above is first received by an insured. And sometimes they would do it. Sometimes they wouldn't. And when they didn't, we had a special disclosure in our quotes. And we point this out to our potential customers. In other words, we were sticking our neck out and giving advice in a state that doesn't require I do that. My corporate attorney was having a heart attack. He said, what are you doing? And I said, let me tell you something. The only people that benefit from the order taker standard of care are lawyers. So if I don't give the advice, I say, oh boy, I can't be held liable if I don't give the advice. I just take the order. You're still going to get sued. And 80% of all claims settle. What have you accomplished except helping some attorney get a bigger house? Nothing. And an even better example of that is how some of the biggest brokerages in the world, I'm not going to mention names now, even though it's a public record and I could, but why bother? Some of the biggest brokerages in the world are shoving it down the throats of their salespeople. Don't give any advice. We can't be liable. Then you look at their financial statements for the ones that are publicly traded. And one of them in 2023 had $355 million held in reserve for malpractice cases and lawyer fees. 355 million. So how's that order taker standard of care working out for you guys? Tell me again how that's working out for you. And I'm convinced that if they give the advice and do what they're supposed to do, that they could probably reduce that by 2/3. You can't stop people from suing you, but you could reduce the frequency dramatically. Yeah. And think of the C-suite bonuses they could get by saving a couple $100 million. Buy a bigger yacht, But that's the truth of the matter. And unfortunately, it's getting worse. And there are actually law firms that I collect these, if you can call it a collection, where they're writing articles telling insurance companies, hire us and we'll help you write policies so that you can reduce the number of claims you pay and get away with it legally.
Wow.
And they're literally doing it intentionally. And courts have already ruled that only one type of claim is covered. The policy is not illusory. Wow. So wrap this up real quick. Here's what your readers and listeners and viewers have to know. I don't care what state you're in. Put it in writing. Everything has to be in writing. Never tell your insurance agent or broker, I want to be covered for everything. I want the best coverage. That's overly broad. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to get it. What you can do is put it in writing. You expect him to sit down with you and go over the policy. And I'm telling you now, take the time.
Yeah.
Take the time. Make him do this. For instance, I see you live in a home or a condo.
Home. Mm-hmm.
Okay, a home. So how much coverage do you have for code and ordinance upgrades if your house burns down? I mean, when you have to rebuild your house, how much of the cost of that house is going to be an upgrade because the codes have changed since you bought it? My house is 75 years old. So you can imagine how much upgrading to current code could cost. Yeah. Do you know what that is? You didn't even know it even existed, did you?
No.
That's another gotcha that'll get you. And if you have to move into an apartment or a condo for 6 months to a year, how long can you do that before your insurance company stops paying you? Yeah. And is there a limit? I firmly believe you should have actual loss sustained. And in my policy, actual loss sustained, number one, there's no time limit. And number two, there's no limit.
In that moment, I just know everyone is going, hold on, wait a minute. Call Sheila. Get Leslie.
Don't take this stuff for granted is what I'm telling you.
For granted. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And finally, never buy on price. Never. Because the implication is all the policies are the same. They're not. Homeowner policies from one carrier to another differ. Auto policies differ from one carrier to another. The states, including California, they only set minimum standards. After that, they can do whatever they want, as long as they file it, it's approved. So don't take it for granted. They want you to buy on price because you're going to end up with less coverage. Number two, you're going to think that all policies are the same, which they're not. Yeah. So when you save $400 on your auto insurance, what have you given up? They don't tell you. Yeah. And here's your policy. Here's the placebo effect. Here's your policy, Dr. Chester. Don't you feel good? You just saved $400 with me, huh?
Wow. Yeah.
Put it all in writing, what you expect them to tell you about the coverage you're looking at. That's number one. Number two, you'd be surprised how often this takes place. Authorize them in that same letter to use the services of a wholesale intermediary if they need to. That way you might, and again, I'm not practicing law here, but it may create a relationship between you and an intermediary that you don't even know they're using. But now you're authorizing it in advance. You want to do that too. That's what I did. I mean, I was a wholesale insurance broker. We didn't deal with the customer directly unless, they had questions that the retail broker, your agent, couldn't answer. And they wanted to have a conference call. And then we were glad to do that. We were happy to do that. We wanted our policyholders to be knowledgeable and know what they were getting and know what the upside and downside might be. We were more than happy to do those conference calls. A lot of retail brokers don't want you to know they're using an intermediary for whatever reason. Maybe they're embarrassed by I don't have access to that market. But no, wrong. If they're really truly interested in covering you, this is what they need to do. And you got to pre-authorize it. And finally, let me leave you with the watchword of my brokerage. We provide financial security. We let our competitors sell you some insurance.
Wow. I love it. I love it. That's a mic drop moment right there, as the kids would say, right? Like, that's it. Oh my heavens. Frederick Fisher, you have left us with a I need to make a phone call moment today. I find that, no, I love that. I think that is wonderful, because part of the purpose of Passioneer, both the magazine and the podcast, is to stir people, is for people to share their passion so that we can be wiser having spent time here. And I tell you, I think today someone is wiser having spent time here. Now, we know that your book is available, of course, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And we have your information here on the screen for everyone to visit. But just in case someone has looked away, could you remind us once again, what is your website? How can people find you?
It's Fisher, Fisher, C as in Charlie, G as in George.com. Stands for Fisher Consulting Group. So FisherCG.com. And just go there, and there are links to the book, and there are articles you can download. I would think that for the kind of consumers I think you may have, they might want to download an article called One River, Two Currents. It's like, here's how the standard of care evolved, but the reality of the day-to-day operations of the insurance industry are in a completely different direction, And so that's number one. And of course, there's a bunch of articles that deal with what are called absolute exclusions, and articles. My big article on claims made triggers with the 242 denials. That's there. There's a bunch of them. So if anybody's having trouble sleeping, guaranteed to put you out, by page 3. What could be more exciting than, I'm reading this really cool article about insurance.
But yet we all need to make sure that we have the coverage that we need.
Well, the book's written for the consumer, though, so it's not technical. I intentionally didn't want it to be technical.
And thank you for that, because so many times that's why people don't ask the follow-up question, or they don't research a little bit further, because it is in a language that they're uncomfortable with and they do not understand. Thank you for being mindful and thinking about the rest of us. And thank you again for being a guest here on PASSIONEER Magazine, the podcast.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to PASSIONEER Magazine, the podcast.